Welcome to the deep dive.
Oh, yeah.
We're going to be
I love this.
diving headfirst into social choice theory.
Yeah.
This is about how we make decisions as a group when everyone has their own preferences.
Exactly.
And it's more than just voting,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
We're talking about, think about choosing a restaurant with friends,
Sure.
picking a family vacation spot, or even resource allocation in a company.
Right.
We've got a stack of fascinating material for you today.
Oh, cool.
Excerpts from a handbook on social choice and voting,
Okay.
classic texts by Sen and Gertner,
I love those guys.
and a newer introductory text by Jane.
Jane. Okay.
Our goal,
Yeah, what's the goal?
to unpack the core ideas,
Okay.
the surprising paradoxes,
I love it.
and maybe even shift how you think about group dynamics.
I think we can do it.
I'm excited.
I am too.
So one of the things that I was reading about
Yeah.
that I thought was really interesting was this idea that social choice theory often starts with this question like, why bother voting at all?
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
The chance of your single vote
Right.
changing the outcome in a large election is tiny,
It's minuscule. Yeah.
but people still go to the polls.
Well, and they should. So
Yes.
what's up with that?
Well, that's the paradox of voting, right?
Right.
It seems irrational
Yeah.
if you're just focused on the individual vote's power.
It's like, why bother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The
Sure.
calculus of voting framework really highlights this.
Okay.
It suggests that if we only consider the direct impact of our vote, the cost, time, effort, etc.,
Right.
seems to outweigh the potential benefit.
But people do vote.
They do.
So clearly something is missing from this calculation.
Right.
What is it?
I think one of the biggest things is that
Yeah.
the calculus of voting assumes we have perfect information
Okay.
about the costs and benefits, right?
Right.
In reality,
Voters might overestimate their influence
I
or
see.
underestimate the costs.
interesting.
There's also the idea of civic duty,
Right.
voting as an expression of belonging to a society, right?
Of course.
You can find more about these motivations in the works of political scientists like Riker and Ordashuk.
Okay.
So there's a lot more to it than just
Yeah.
that one calculation.
Yeah, it's not just about cold, hard logic,
Exactly.
but it's about social norms and personal values, too.
Absolutely.
Okay, so that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Now let's switch gears a little bit and talk about Condorcet's jury theorem.
Okay.
Condorcet, this theorem gets to the heart of collective wisdom.
All right.
Imagine a jury
I'm imagining.
deciding a case.
Okay.
Each juror has a chance of being right or wrong.
Of course.
What Condorcet explored was how combining these individual judgments,
Okay.
even if imperfect,
Mm-hmm.
can lead to a more accurate group decision.
Right. So like
Yeah.
the wisdom of the crowds kind of thing.
Yeah, strength in numbers.
Exactly. Strengthen numbers.
Okay,
The theorem shows that if each juror is more likely to be right than wrong,
okay.
and they make judgments independently,
Hmm?
the probability of the jury as a whole
Yeah,
reaching the correct verdict increases as the jury size grows.
interesting.
So in theory, a huge jury could achieve near perfect accuracy.
Wow.
You can find a more rigorous mathematical treatment of this in the works of List and Gooden.
Okay.
They've done a lot of work on judgment aggregation.
Wow.
It's fascinating stuff.
It's pretty amazing, but it also feels a bit idealistic,
Right.
What about real-world juries,
Yeah.
where people might be influenced by each other or by outside factors?
You're hitting on a key point.
Okay.
Condorcet's theorem relies on some important assumptions, right?
Okay.
Jurors need to make judgments independently,
Yeah.
and their individual competence matters.
Right.
If everyone is likely to be wrong,
Yeah.
a larger jury might just amplify the error. The dynamics of deliberation and how social pressures might influence jury decisions
Yeah.
is something that legal scholars like Sunstein have written extensively about.
I'll have to check that out.
Yeah,
Okay, so collective wisdom has its limits,
it does.
and context really matters.
Context always matters.
And this makes me think about
Yeah.
political ideologies and how people with different viewpoints might vote.
That leads us nicely to spatial models.
Okay?
Imagine a spectrum representing political ideologies.
I'm imagining it.
Okay,
Good.
I can see it.
Each voter has an ideal point on this spectrum,
Okay,
representing their most preferred policy.
right.
Their preference declines as we move away from this ideal point,
Yeah.
forming a single peaked pattern.
So it goes down on either side.
Yeah, it's like a hill.
Yeah.
The classic work on this is by Anthony Downs.
Oh, Anthony Downs.
His book, An Economic Theory of Democracy,
I've heard of that one.
is considered foundational in this area.
Okay.
Yeah.
So voters closest to a candidate's position
Are more likely to support them.
Absolutely.
Makes sense.
It does.
Okay.
And in this model, the median voter's ideal point becomes really important.
Interesting.
If we have an odd number of voters and everyone has these single-peaked preferences, no other policy can beat the median voter's preference under majority rule.
Okay.
This is the essence of Black's median voter theorem.
Okay. Black's median voter theorem.
Yeah, it's a big one.
So the median voter holds a lot of sway in these models.
Precisely.
Gotcha.
And this is one of the reasons why politicians often try to appeal to that, like, average voter, right?
Yeah.
Like, they're trying to hit that sweet spot.
It makes sense.
In the middle.
But of course, real-world politics is rarely this simple.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
Right.
You can't easily map every issue onto a single line.
Right. When we move beyond one dimension, things get
more complex.
Like way more complex.
Way more complex. It's not just left or right. Like all these different issues.
There's multidimensional. And how do you even map that?
And the median voter loses its privileged status.
Okay.
And you can have situations where no single policy can beat all others.
Oh, wow.
In a head-to-head majority vote.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, this is where the work of McKelvey and Schofield on chaos theorems in spatial models becomes really interesting.
Chaos theorems, that sounds intense.
They demonstrated that in multidimensional spaces, voting outcomes can become quite unpredictable.
Wow. So it's like it's almost like we need a whole new set of tools to understand this.
New tools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really cool.
It is cool.
Then that's where the fun really begins.
Oh, yeah.
Because as soon as we acknowledge that it's this complex, we have to start thinking about strategic behavior.
Oh, absolutely.
Not just by voters, but by candidates, too.
Okay, so instead of just expressing preferences, voters and candidates are trying to, like,
outmaneuver each other.
Outmaneuver each other.
Exactly.
Wow.
And that's where game theory comes in.
Oh, game theory, one of my favorite topics.
It's great. It's a powerful tool for understanding how people make decisions when they know others are making decisions too.
Right.
And those decisions affect each other.
Oh, yeah. That's a whole other ball game.
It is.
So it's kind of like a game of chess.
Yeah.
Where you're anticipating your opponent's moves.
Exactly.
Okay.
And in the context of voting, this is where probabilistic voting models shine.
Probabilistic voting models. Okay.
Yeah. These models recognize that voters' choices are influenced not only by their own preferences, but also by what they think other voters and candidates will do.
So there's like a whole perception.
It's all about perception.
Element there.
Yeah. Perception and strategy.
So it's not just about voting for your ideal point.
Right.
But also about trying to get the best possible outcome.
Exactly.
Given how everyone else is likely to vote.
You got it.
Wow.
And a core concept in game theory is the Nash equilibrium.
Nash equilibrium. Okay, I've heard of this.
It's a state where no player can improve their own outcome by changing their strategy, assuming everyone else keeps doing what they're doing.
So it's kind of like a standoff.
It is a standoff. It's a stable state.
Yeah.
A standoff where everyone's made the best move they can given what their opponents are doing.
Given the circumstances, yeah.
The application of game theory to political science was pioneered by people like Duncan Black and Anthony Downs.
Oh, wow. Those are big names.
Big names.
Yeah.
Yeah. Their work had a huge impact on how we think about political strategy.
Wow.
So you can see how this adds this whole layer of complexity to elections, making them less predictable.
Right. It's not just about the issues anymore.
It's not.
It's about all these other factors.
Exactly. And it emphasizes the role of information and perception in campaigns.
Right.
How candidates frame issues, how they try to influence voters' perceptions of their opponents.
It's all a game.
It's all a game.
That's crazy.
It all factors into these strategic calculations.
Yeah.
There's a fascinating book by Larry Bartels called Unequal Democracy.
Okay, Unequal Democracy.
Where he explores how voter perceptions and misperceptions can influence election outcomes.
It sounds like a good read.
It's a really good read.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is giving me a whole new perspective.
I'm glad.
On the political process.
Yeah. It's fascinating stuff.
Now, shifting gears a bit.
Okay.
How do we actually measure something as complex as political ideology?
Right.
It seems really slippery.
You're absolutely right.
You know, the challenging task.
Like, how do you even define it, let alone measure it?
Right.
Yeah.
One common method is roll call voting analysis.
Roll call voting analysis, okay?
Essentially, you analyze how legislators vote on a bunch of bills to figure out their ideological positions.
By looking at patterns of agreement and disagreement, researchers try to create a sort of map of where politicians stand on different issues.
So you're looking at their actions?
Yeah, we're looking at their actions.
As a proxy for their beliefs?
Exactly.
Okay.
Keith Poole and Howard Rosenthal are the big names in this area.
Huh.
They developed a method called Nominate.
Nominate.
That's widely used to analyze roll call voting data.
Okay, so it's like a quantitative method
It is.
for measuring something that's really qualitative.
Yeah.
So their voting record acts as a proxy for their underlying beliefs.
Precisely. But it's important to recognize the limitations.
Oh, I bet there are a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
First, we're assuming that voting behavior accurately reflects ideology.
Right, because someone might vote a certain way
It's
for a
sad.
variety of reasons.
Right. Legislators might vote strategically based on party pressure or what their constituents want, not their own true beliefs.
Right, so you could have this whole disconnect between how they vote and what they actually believe.
So the map could be distorted.
Right, and like you were saying before, the choice of which votes to include in the analysis could also skew the results.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if you're only choosing certain votes on certain issues, you might be missing.
You're missing a huge part of the picture.
Yeah.
It's like deciding which stars to include in a constellation.
Right.
You can get different shapes.
You get a totally different picture.
Depending on your selection.
Right.
Right.
And then the other thing is that this roll call analysis often treats ideology as static.
Right.
Like it's fixed.
Yeah, as if it never changes.
When in reality, people's views can change over time.
Absolutely.
So it's almost like taking a snapshot of a moving target.
It is. You're missing the dynamism of how people's beliefs evolve.
Right. You just get this one.
Yeah, you get this one slice. But it doesn't tell the whole story.
This whole discussion is making me realize that social choice theory isn't just about voting systems.
It's so much more than that.
It is. It touches on much deeper philosophical issues, too.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And one thing that I was thinking about, we often think of rights as fundamental to a just society.
Of course.
But how do they fit into the framework of social choice?
That's a great question.
Where we're focused on aggregating individual preferences.
It's a tough one.
Yeah, because rights seem like they should be more than just a matter of what the majority wants.
They are, yeah.
Right.
One way to think about it is that rights act as constraints on what kind of choices are even allowed.
Interesting.
Even if a majority prefers a certain outcome, it might be off limits if it violates someone's rights.
Right.
Think of it like boundaries.
Okay, I like that.
We're saying there are some lines we don't cross, no matter how many people want it.
It's like these are fundamental non-negotiables.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This idea of rights as constraints on social choice have been explored by philosophers like Robert Nozick and Amartya Sen.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's a rich history of thought on this.
Yeah, so rights act like a safeguard, even against the tyranny of the majority.
Absolutely.
Okay, I like that.
And this leads to a whole set of new questions.
Right, because then you get into how do we define and prioritize rights?
Exactly.
Who gets to decide which rights are fundamental?
Right.
How do we handle conflicting rights claims?
Exactly. These are deep philosophical water.
Deep waters.
But they're important waters.
This is heavy stuff.
It is.
But it feels important to consider.
It's essential.
You know, it's like we're going beyond the mechanics of voting.
Absolutely.
And getting into the ethical heart of social choice.
You've hit the nail on the head. Social choice theory provides this really powerful framework for thinking about these dilemmas.
Right.
It helps us analyze the trade-offs between individual freedom and collective decision-making.
Yeah.
It's fascinating.
So it's not just about counting votes.
It's not.
But also about figuring out what kind of choices are fair.
Just values.
And respect individual rights.
It's about principles.
Right.
Yeah. And one concept that adds another layer of complexity.
Oh, here we go. Another layer.
Is the idea of alienable rights.
Alienable rights. Okay.
These are rights that individuals can choose to waive or transfer to others, as opposed to inalienable rights, which are considered absolute and non-negotiable.
So alienable rights are like something you can give up.
You can give them up.
Whereas inalienable rights are like
you can't give those
inherent and can't be traded away.
Exactly. Think of it like owning a piece of property.
Okay.
You can sell it. give it away or do whatever you want with it. But certain rights, like the right to life, are considered so fundamental that they can't be taken away or given up.
Yeah.
This distinction between alienable and inalienable rights was a major point of discussion in the work of John Locke.
Oh, John Locke.
Who is considered one of the founders of liberal political thought.
Wow. Okay, so this adds a whole new dimension to the conversation.
It does.
Yeah.
Because if people can choose to give up certain rights, doesn't that change the whole game?
Right. Like, what are the limits, then?
It certainly does.
Of collective decision-making.
It raises questions about the limits of collective decision-making.
Right.
For example, if someone voluntarily agrees to participate in a risky activity, does that mean society has no obligation to protect them from harm?
That's a good question.
Right.
Yeah.
This tension between individual autonomy and social responsibility is a key theme in the work of political philosophers like John Stuart Mill and Isaiah Berlin.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's a lot to unpack there.
These are thorny issues.
They are.
But it's fascinating to think about how social choice theory can help us grapple with them.
It's a powerful tool
Yeah.
for navigating the complexities of making choices in a group.
Right.
Especially when those choices involve fundamental values and rights.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm starting to see how social choice theory
Yeah.
goes way beyond just analyzing elections.
It does.
It's really about understanding the foundations of social life itself.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's about how we live together.
It's how we make decisions together.
How we make decisions together.
How we coexist.
Yeah.
It's fundamental.
Wow, this has been...
It's really cool stuff.
This deep dive has really opened my eyes to...
It's a big field.
The complexity of making decisions as a group.
Absolutely.
It's not just about tallying votes.
No.
It's about navigating preferences and strategies, rights, and even philosophical questions about the nature of justice.
It's a lot.
One thing that I was thinking about, though, is this whole idea of manipulation.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked about
a big one.
How voters and candidates can act strategically.
Right.
But can voting systems themselves be manipulated?
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the answer is often yes.
Oh, no.
Many voting systems are vulnerable to manipulation.
Okay.
Meaning that individuals or groups can misrepresent their preferences.
Oh, interesting.
To try and sway the outcome.
So even if a system's designed to be fair, clever players can game it.
Exactly.
Wow.
One classic example is the board account.
Board account. Okay.
It's a system that tries to consider the full ranking of preferences.
Okay.
Not just your top choice.
Right.
But it's susceptible to strategic voting.
How so?
Imagine your favorite candidate has little chance of winning.
Okay.
You might be tempted to rank a less preferred candidate higher, just to prevent someone you really dislike from winning.
So it's like playing poker.
Right.
You bluff to try and get the best outcome.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
It highlights the tension between honesty and strategy in voting.
Right, because you want your vote to reflect your true preferences, but you also want it to be effective.
You want to have an impact.
Right.
There's a whole body of research on strategic voting behavior.
Right.
And political scientists like Stephen Brams have written extensively about it.
Wow, so this is like a whole...
It's a huge area.
Area of study.
Yeah,
is there any way to design a system...
That's the question.
...that's completely immune to this kind of manipulation?
That's the holy grail, right?
Yeah.
A truly strategy-proof voting system.
Okay.
But there's a famous result called the Gibbard-Satterthwaite theorem.
Oh, Gibbard-Satterthwaite.
That throws a wrench into that idea.
How so?
It basically says that any voting system that meets some basic criteria, like having at least 3 choices, and letting voters rank those choices... is either dictatorial or manipulable.
Oh, so we're stuck with either a tyrant or a system that can be gamed.
It might seem that way.
That's a bit disheartening.
I know, but there are nuances.
Okay, I'm listening.
First, the theorem applies to deterministic systems. Where the outcome is totally determined by the votes. If you introduce randomness... like in a lottery system.
A lottery system, so it's like...
Yeah, you might be able to get around...
They're introducing chance...
Exactly.
...into the equation.
A little bit of chance.
So a little bit of chance could actually make the system more robust.
In a way, yes.
Interesting.
It makes it harder to perfectly predict and manipulate the outcome.
Gotcha.
Second, The theorem focuses on manipulation through misrepresenting preferences.
Okay.
There are other forms of manipulation, like controlling which choices are even considered.
Oh, right. So it's like the game is rigged before the voting even starts.
Exactly.
What?
The Gifford-Satterthwaite theorem is a powerful reminder that no system is perfect.
Right.
We have to be vigilant about the potential for manipulation in all its forms.
Yeah.
It underscores the importance of transparency and accountability
Of course.
in the design and implementation of voting systems.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
This has been such an eye-opening conversation.
I'm glad.
We started with this simple act of voting, but we've ended up exploring
We went deep.
profound questions about fairness and strategy and the limits of collective decision-making.
It's been a journey.
It really has.
Yeah.
So
I think the key takeaway is this social choice theory isn't just an abstract academic exercise.
It's not just theory.
It's not.
Right.
It's a powerful tool for understanding how we make choices together and for building more just and equitable societies.
I love that.
It's really important stuff.
For our listeners, we encourage you to continue thinking about these issues.
You do.
Consider how the principles of social choice play out in your own life.
Right.
Everyday decisions to the big societal challenges we face.
They're all around us.
Yeah, it's everywhere.
Remember, every time a group makes a choice, there's a hidden world of preferences.
There's so much more going on.
Strategies and paradoxes at play.
Than meets the eye.
Social choice theory gives us the lens to see that world more clearly.
Right.
And to make more informed and ethical choices together.
That's a beautiful way to put it.
It is.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Into the fascinating world of social choice theory.
It was fun.
We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a new topic.
Sounds good.
Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep making choices together.
Let's do it.